Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you all are doing well. I'm with you MD Shajadur Ahmed and I'm welcoming you all to the tutorial of Python sequence. So far we have discussed about stack declaration and how to use stack in Python, what are the list comprehension and the generator expression used in Python. So in this part we are actually going to introduce with some interesting fact and interesting concept of Python. So not talking too much, let us start. So first of all, sequence processing function. So sequence processing function is actually used to find out minimum and maximum value between some numerical values. Like it deals with ASCII values of the character. Suppose we are actually trying to compare which is greater, red or orange, and we use a condition that red is smaller than orange. So what should be the output? It will produce an output because R and O have some values. So it only include the first character of a word, and in that case the first character is R and O. So if we check the ASCII value of R and O, we can check that in Python by use ORD function. So ORD, this one is a function that is actually used to check the numerical value or ASCII value of a character. So if we say ORD R, then as we all know that the ASCII value of R, capital R, is 82 and the ASCII value of small letter O is 111. So that's why when we said red is smaller than orange, that means R, which is 82, is smaller than 111, it produces a result is true. So that's how it works. Actually we can compare the numerical values in Python, because when we compare it, it actually include the ASCII value of the character. So let's move forward. So now reverse sequence. So reverse is a method that return an iterator that enable you to iterate over a sequence of values backwards. So whenever we have some list of elements and we are actually trying to give a output of the elements in reverse order, in that particular case we can use this reverse function or reverse method. So what we need to do, first of all, we have to initialize a list, and if we print the list, it will look like 6, whatever it is in default. And now we are actually trying to reverse it. So before reversing, we put the reverse value into another list called renum2, and then we actually reversing all the value from the first element to the last element. So that's why we actually use for loop. So we said I for I in reverse, and for which list? For the name list. So it will now, if we print the new list, it will print the elements of num2 in reverse order. As you can see that the last element become the first element and the first element become the last element. So actually we can do that by using the reverse, but there are another method which is called reverse, also allowed us to do that in simple way. So we can also apply that too, and we are going to see in our coding example. So let's see the next example. So in this example we have also used the reversed method, but in that particular case actually we are reversing all the elements of list called numbers, and at the same time we are actually multiplying all the elements by 2. As you can see that we are actually multiplying all the elements by 2. Actually we are putting the output in another list called reverse numbers, and if we give the output of reverse number, it will look like this. First of all, the last element become the first element, 6 become the first element and multiply by 2, so 12. 5 become the second elements and multiply by 2, that's 10, and so on. So let us see in the programming. So as you can see, we have defined a list, and now actually we are trying to reverse the list, and then the reverse order will be become another list. So if we print this one, you can see the 4 become the first element, 9 becomes the second element, and so on. But we can reverse all the element of a list by using another method called reverse, not reversed. So that is actually another way, and I think it is much easier way to do. So for that, what we need to do, we just need to do, let us copy this part and then dot reverse instead of reversed, and then if we print this one, it will be printed as reverse. So as you can see, this method also reverse all the elements from the list. So you have seen both of the method. You have option to use any of one of them. Choice is yours. So let's move on to the next example. So as you can see, in the particular case, our code is almost similar as the previous example, but right now we are actually trying to reverse. At the same time, we are actually trying to multiply all the value by 2. So as you can see, the 4 is multiplied by 2, so 8, 9 is multiplied by 2, then 18, and so on. So we can actually do that by this way also. So that's how actually we use reverse method to reverse the element, and at the same time we can do other function or other things as well. So let's go back to the slide. Okay, so now we move on to very interesting topic in Python, which is two-dimensional list. So two-dimensional list can contain another list as its item. It representation look like a table. So when it represented or when it give the output, it look like a table. Contain two indices, that is row and column, where row specifies as the first indices and the second indices as column. That means suppose we are trying to execute or trying to access a value, and that particular case, if our list name is A, then first of all we need to include the row number like 1, and then the second indices will include the column number like 1. So it will specify the value which is in on position. So okay, so creating a 2D list. Create a 2D list contains 3 student grades. So we are going to create a 2D list which will contain 3 student grades. Inside a list, we add another 3 lists. So inside a list, there will be another list that is nested of student grade. Representation of this shown in figure. So you can see the representation of this. So first of all, we are actually declare a list called A, and then we are actually trying to input all the elements as a list inside another list. So this one is our first list, and inside the list there are 3 different lists of as a grade of 3 different students. And if we give output, it will look like this, but it is shown in the tabular format, but our output is going to be look like this. So that means in the first indices the value is 77, and which is indicating the first grade of the first student, and then second grade of the first student, and the third grade of the first student, and so on. So let us execute it in our code. So as you can see, we have created a list called list2d, and inside the list there are 3 different lists as the grades of 3 different students. And if we run this code, it will display the list in a single row, but we can actually formalize it in other way as well. So let us go back to the slide. So iterate 2D list. 2D list contain row and column. We already know that. Accessing all elements need 2 for loop as following. So if we want to access all the element like the tabular format as we have seen, we need to use 2 loop. First of all, one loop to print all the rows, and then another loop to print all the elements in each rows. So that's what it is doing. First of all, first row will indicate all the rows. There are 3 rows, and then second loop will print all the elements in each row. That means there are 4 elements in each row. It will print one by one. So if we execute this part in our coding. So we are using same list as we have done in previous case, that is list 2D, and we are actually trying to print all the rows by using loop. There are 3 rows, and then we are trying to print all the elements or all the item in the rows. So there are 4 items in each row. So if we print this one, you can see it will print all the rows and all the element in each row by this format. That means in a tabular format. So you can see from the figure, and you can understand from the figure that these 4 grades are the first student grades, these 4 grades are the second student grades, and so on. So let's go back to the slide. Okay, next, identifying or accessing an element from the 2D list. So element or item can be identified by a name of the form A, then I, then J, where A is the list name, and I is a unique row, and J indicate a unique column. So A is the list name as we discussed, and I and J are the indices that uniquely identify each element's row and column respectively. So in this form we can represent 77, which is the first element or the first grade of the first student, as A00. That means in the list, in the 0 row, in the 0 column. So this is the whole list called A, and in the list, first of all we go for the row number 0, that means this row, and column number 0, that means this one. So by this one we can access the first element of the first row, 77. So the code work look like this. So if we execute this part in our okay, so here we are in the coding part. So as you can see, we have used a new method called enumerate. So enumerate is a method that is actually used to access the index of a particular element from the list. So we are actually trying to catch or trying to access the index, that means the row index and the column index of a particular value, and actually trying to give a output of each elements having their row and column indices. So that's why we have used 2 loop, first of all for row and printing all the indices, row indices, and then J as a column, and trying to access all the row indices. And then in the print we have used the F string, and inside the F string, first of all the list name and the row indices, and then the column indices, and after that the element that is actually stored in the particular row and column indices. So if we execute this code, you can see now we are actually printing the index of all the elements 2D from the 2D list, and also the element as well. So you can see it is actually now clear, that is what we have to do and how we can access all the element individually. So just we need to indicate their row and column position, row and column index to access a particular value. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. So this is the end of this tutorial. So hope you guys understand how to declare and use a 2D list in Python. So that's all from me. Hope to see you again in next tutorial. Till then, everyone stay safe, stay home. Allah Hafiz.